The world didn't stop spinning when the photograph leaked, but for President Elijah Monroe, it might as well have. The grainy image showed him in a dimly lit room, wearing a shimmering pink skirt paired with a satin blouse, his lips painted a deep crimson. It was unmistakably him, down to the distinctive mole on his cheek and his strong jawline, softened by expertly applied contouring. It started as a whisper on social media, then erupted into a full-blown scandal within hours. Hashtags like #SkirtGate and #PresidentInHeels trended worldwide, igniting debates that ranged from the political to the absurd. The press demanded answers. His staff panicked. The nation held its collective breath, waiting to see how their leader would respond. But Elijah Monroe didn't panic. Instead, he looked at the photo on the screen of his chief of staff's phone, adjusted his tie, and said, "Prepare a press conference. I'll address this directly." The room went silent. Chief of Staff Martha Price blinked. "Sir, are you sure that's wise? Maybe we can spin this, claim it's photoshopped or taken out of context." Elijah shook his head, his expression calm but resolute.
"No.
It's me. Hiding the truth won't help. It never does." By the time he stepped onto the podium, the White House press room was packed with reporters, cameras flashing like fireworks. Elijah took a deep breath, feeling the weight of every gaze fixed on him. This wasn't just about him anymore. This was about what it meant to lead, to stand tall even when the world wanted to cut you down. "Good evening," he began, his voice steady. "As many of you are aware, a photograph of me has been circulating online. In it, I am wearing what some might consider unconventional attire for a man. Let me state this plainly. The photo is real. It was taken at a private gathering among friends, where I felt comfortable expressing a part of myself that has long remained hidden." The murmurs in the room grew louder. Elijah held up a hand to silence them. "I understand that this may come as a shock to some of you. After all, society has long dictated what men and women should wear, how they should act, and who they should be. But the truth is, I am not ashamed. I have always believed in the freedom to be oneself, even when it's difficult. Especially when it's difficult." He paused, letting his words sink in. "This is not about fashion. It's about identity, authenticity, and the courage to challenge norms that no longer serve us. If my presidency can stand for anything, let it stand for the idea that we are stronger when we embrace our differences rather than fear them." The room erupted with questions, but Elijah raised his hand again. "I'll take questions tomorrow. For now, I want everyone to think about what kind of nation we want to be. One that condemns, or one that celebrates the full spectrum of human expression. Thank you." He stepped away from the podium, leaving a room in stunned silence. The fallout was immediate and polarized. Conservative pundits decried him as unfit for office, while progressives hailed him as a trailblazer. Protesters gathered outside the White House, some waving signs that read, "Impeach the skirt wearer," and others that proclaimed, "Be yourself, Mr. President." Within days, the entire country was caught in a fervent debate. Talk shows dedicated hours to discussing gender norms. Fashion designers offered to create custom ensembles for the president. Even international leaders chimed in, with some offering support and others expressing bewilderment. Elijah stayed the course. He continued his duties, meeting with foreign dignitaries and signing bills into law, all while refusing to back down from the controversy. Behind closed doors, however, the pressure was immense. "You're a brave man, Elijah," Martha said one evening as they reviewed his schedule. "But you've also stirred up a hornet's nest. Are you sure you're ready for what's coming?" Elijah looked up from his papers, his expression thoughtful. "I didn't ask for this to happen, Martha. But now that it has, I owe it to myself, and to everyone who's ever felt like they didn't belong, to see it through." As weeks turned into months, the conversation shifted. What began as a scandal evolved into a movement. People across the country shared their own stories of breaking free from societal expectations, often using the hashtag when boys wear skirts. Elijah's openness had inspired a wave of self-acceptance, and not just among those exploring gender identity. His message resonated with anyone who had ever felt constrained by tradition or fear of judgment. One day, Elijah received a letter from a young boy named Liam. The envelope was decorated with stickers of stars and rainbows, and the handwriting was wobbly but earnest. "Dear Mr. President," it read, "my name is Liam, and I'm 10 years old. I like wearing dresses because they make me feel happy, but some kids at school make fun of me. When I saw you on TV, I felt brave. Thank you for being you. Love, Liam." Elijah read the letter twice, his throat tightening. He folded it carefully and placed it in his desk drawer, next to a photograph of his late mother. She had always told him to be true to himself, even when it wasn't easy. That evening, during his weekly televised address, Elijah held up Liam's letter. "This is why I won't back down," he said. "Because no one child or adult should ever feel ashamed of who they are. If my journey helps even one person embrace their truth, then it's worth it." The turning point came when a major corporation announced a nationwide campaign to promote inclusivity, using Elijah's image as a symbol of progress. The ad featured a silhouette of a man in a suit and heels, accompanied by the slogan, "Redefine strength. Redefine you." The backlash was fierce, but so was the support. Elijah's approval ratings, which had plummeted initially, began to climb. His administration introduced policies aimed at protecting LGBTQ+ rights, expanding access to mental health care, and promoting education on diversity and inclusion. 1 year after the photo leaked, Elijah stood before Congress to deliver the State of the Union address. He wore a tailored navy suit, but his tie was a soft blush pink, a subtle nod to the journey that had reshaped his presidency. "My fellow Americans," he began, "this past year has been one of challenges and change. We have confronted our biases, questioned our norms, and dared to imagine a future where authenticity is celebrated rather than suppressed. That future is within our grasp, if we have the courage to seize it." As he spoke, the chamber erupted in applause. Even some of his fiercest critics had to admit, Elijah Monroe had not only weathered the storm, he had turned it into a beacon of hope. And somewhere in a small town, a boy named Liam watched the speech with a smile, feeling a little less alone in the world. The months following the State of the Union address marked a profound cultural shift in America. What had once been a fleeting social media trend evolved into a nationwide dialogue about authenticity and self-expression. Public figures, from Hollywood stars to athletes, began sharing their own experiences of defying societal expectations. Each story added fuel to the fire Elijah Monroe had unintentionally ignited. But not everyone was on board. Opposition party leaders capitalized on the controversy, accusing Elijah of prioritizing personal crusades over pressing national issues. They painted him as a distraction, a president too consumed by identity politics to govern effectively. A relentless media cycle dissected his every move, from his policies to his wardrobe choices. Elijah knew the stakes were high. His re-election campaign loomed just a year away, and he couldn't afford to lose focus. He doubled down on legislative achievements, pushing for sweeping reforms in healthcare, infrastructure, and education. Yet even as he tackled these traditional challenges, the issue of identity remained central to his presidency. One day, Elijah decided to take a bold step. In a televised town hall, he announced the creation of a presidential task force dedicated to promoting inclusivity across all aspects of American life. The initiative, called Project True Colors, aimed to support schools, workplaces, and communities in fostering environments where everyone could thrive as their authentic selves. True leadership, Elijah declared that evening, is not about avoiding uncomfortable conversations. It's about embracing them, even when it's inconvenient, even when it's controversial. If we want to build a stronger nation, we must start by building stronger individuals, people who feel seen, valued, and free to be themselves. The announcement was met with mixed reactions. While many celebrated it as a groundbreaking move, detractors accused Elijah of using taxpayer money to fund a social experiment. Heated debates played out on cable news and in living rooms across the country. Among the skeptics was Senator Margaret Hill, a formidable opponent who had her sights set on the presidency. During a televised interview, she didn't hold back. "President Monroe may have good intentions," she said, but he's losing sight of what this country truly needs. We don't need a task force to tell us how to live our lives. What we need is leadership that focuses on jobs, security, and stability, not on redefining gender norms. Elijah watched the interview in his private quarters, a faint smile on his lips. He'd expected resistance, especially from someone as politically savvy as Senator Hill. But he wasn't deterred. If anything, her criticism only reinforced his commitment to the cause. The next day, Elijah's communications team organized a public forum where citizens could share their thoughts on Project True Colors. Among the speakers was a middle-aged factory worker named Jim, who stepped onto the stage with visible nerves. "I've spent my whole life following the rules," Jim began, his voice shaky. "I worked hard, raised my kids, and did what I thought was expected of me. But I've also spent my whole life hiding a part of myself because I was scared of what people might think. Seeing the president stand up there, owning who he is, it made me realize I don't have to hide anymore." Jim's voice cracked as he continued. "Last week, for the first time in my life, I walked into a store and bought a dress. It wasn't easy, but it felt right. And if a guy like me can do that, maybe this country can change too." The room erupted in applause, and Elijah felt a lump form in his throat. Stories like Jim's reminded him why this fight mattered. It wasn't about politics or approval ratings. It was about people finding the courage to live their truth. As Project True Colors gained momentum, it began to attract international attention. Leaders from progressive nations praised Elijah's efforts, while others viewed them with skepticism. At a global summit in Geneva, a foreign journalist asked him if he worried about America's reputation on the world stage. "Reputation is built on integrity," Elijah replied. "If being honest about who I am and encouraging others to do the same affects our standing, then so be it. I believe history will judge us not by how we conformed, but by how we led." The journalist pressed further. "Do you think this makes you a stronger leader, Mr. President?" Elijah smiled. "I think it makes me a more honest one. And honesty is strength." His words were met with a standing ovation from some attendees, while others remained seated, their expressions neutral. Elijah knew he couldn't win everyone over, but he also knew that wasn't the point. Progress was rarely about universal agreement. It was about moving forward, step by step. Meanwhile, inside the White House, Elijah's team worked tirelessly to navigate the political and cultural landscape. Martha, his ever-loyal chief of staff, became a master at deflecting criticism and turning it into opportunities for dialogue. "Do you realize what you've done?" she said one evening, her tone a mix of exasperation and admiration. "You've turned a presidency into a platform for personal growth, for the whole country." Elijah chuckled. "I didn't plan for any of this, Martha. But sometimes, the best plans are the ones you never make." Martha raised an eyebrow. "Just promise me you'll keep an eye on the polls." "Inspirational speeches are great, but we still need votes." Elijah nodded. "Don't worry. I haven't forgotten." As the re-election campaign kicked into high gear, Elijah faced his toughest challenge yet, a televised debate against Senator Hill. The stakes were high, and both candidates knew it. The debate began with predictable topics: economy, healthcare, foreign policy. But it wasn't long before the moderator brought up the issue of identity politics. "Senator Hill," the moderator asked, "you've been critical of President Monroe's focus on inclusivity initiatives. Can you elaborate on why you believe they're misguided?" Hill nodded, her expression stern. "Absolutely. While I respect the president's personal journey, I believe it's distracted him from the real issues facing Americans. Families are struggling to make ends meet. Our infrastructure is crumbling. And yet, we're spending millions on programs that, frankly, don't address these problems." The camera panned to Elijah, who listened intently before responding. "Senator Hill raises an important point," he began, his tone measured. "Yes, families are struggling. Yes, our infrastructure needs work. And my administration has taken significant steps to address those issues. But let me ask you this. How can we build a stronger nation if its people are afraid to be themselves? How can we solve external problems if we ignore the internal ones? The fear, the shame, the divisions that hold us back." He leaned forward, his gaze steady. "This isn't just about inclusivity. It's about unlocking human potential. When people feel safe and valued, they contribute more to society. They innovate, they collaborate, they thrive. That's the kind of America I'm fighting for. The audience erupted in applause, and even some of Hill's supporters couldn't help but nod in agreement. On election night, the nation held its breath as results trickled in. The race was close, closer than anyone had anticipated. Elijah watched the coverage from the Oval Office, surrounded by his team. As midnight approached, the final results came in. Elijah Monroe had won re-election by a narrow margin. The room erupted in cheers, but Elijah simply closed his eyes, exhaling deeply. "You did it," Martha said, gripping his shoulder. "No," Elijah replied, a small smile forming on his lips. "We did it." In the days that followed, Elijah's victory speech became one of the most watched events in modern history. Standing before a crowd of supporters, he spoke not just as a president, but as a man who had defied expectations and emerged stronger for it. "Tonight, we proved that authenticity is not a weakness, it's a strength," he declared. "We proved that courage isn't about being unafraid, it's about moving forward despite the fear. And we proved that this nation, for all its challenges, is still capable of progress." As the crowd roared, Elijah felt a profound sense of gratitude. The journey had been anything but easy, but it had been worth every step. For the first time in his life, he felt completely, unapologetically free. Thank you so much for watching till now. It means the world to have you here. This community is all about empowering each other and celebrating the incredible journeys of everyone on their path to living authentically. If you're ever feeling lost or alone, remember you have a whole family here for you. Hit that subscribe button, smash that like button, and let's keep inspiring each other, sending you all the love and strength in the world. Until next time, live your life by your rules.